Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the Theater of the Oppressed presentation tonight as part of Liberation and Freedom Days here at the Heritage Center. My name is Leslie Scott Jones. I am the Associate Curator of Education and Public Programming, and I am also the Artistic Director of the Charlottesville Players Guild. And CPG is who's bringing this to you tonight. And we're very excited because it's something quite new for us, but it's also something that we've wanted to do for quite a while. So for those of you who have not interacted with Liberation and Freedom Day before, this one is a little different because of COVID, as everything else is. But this event has grown over the past few years. The very first year that it was done, it was literally an hour long. And then the next year it grew to an hour presentation and then a march from UVA to the Heritage Center. And then the next year that march grew and we added several events that encompassed the entire week, including a Hush Harbor concert and a panel on Black mental health. So here we are now. And because we couldn't gather for the march and we couldn't gather for the Hush Harbor, CPG wanted to do something that was inherently about theater, but also having very specifically to do with the liberation of artists to tell their own stories. And so Theater of the Oppressed was the perfect answer. So without further ado, I am going to introduce you to my partner for tonight, Liz Morgan, who is a facilitator with Theater of the Oppressed in New York. And she's going to take us through a presentation, just giving you some background on what they do and how they do it. And then we're gonna move into some other stuff. It's gonna be exciting. So hey, Liz.
Hey, thanks for having me. Let me see if I can get my technical stuff together, sharing screen, but I'm not on Zoom. This is new, but I think I can do it. Hey, I hope y'all are seeing a screen right now. I can't see myself, but maybe that's for the best. But yeah, so a couple of weeks ago, I had the pleasure of meeting Leslie as well as 5 artist actors, and we did a workshop that I am calling "Collaging Your Story with Theater of the Oppressed" online, because now we're trying to make online theater, and it was co-facilitated by myself as well as my partner in crime, Omari Soulfinger, that couldn't be with us tonight. But so before I jump in, I have a quote that's not necessarily from Theater of the Oppressed, but I think it's related to it, and I hope you'll see why. This Lily Watson quote: "If you have come here to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. If you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together." And so, yeah, I really like to think about those words a lot as I'm working in communities, because it was different for me to virtually drop in on Charlottesville, or now I know it's called Seville to some of y'all, and thinking about like, what is my connection to the very specific struggles here, because we tend to be pretty specific about our NYC struggles at TO NYC. And so, yeah, what is TO? What is theater of the what? So it's TO is a series of theater activities and performance techniques that engage communities in social change. Theater of the Oppressed was not created by us in New York City, but rather by the legendary Brazilian theater director and activist Augusto Boal in the 70s, who was himself inspired by Paulo Freire's pedagogy of the oppressed, if y'all are hip to that. And so it's a form of activism as well as artistic practice. And Theater of the Oppressed is now used in over 70 countries around the world. So we are definitely not the only ones doing this kind of work. And so I like to talk sometimes about Boal's story. As the story goes, Boal and his company of professional actors had written and performed this show that was about Brazilian farm workers whose land had been stolen by the dictatorship. And at the end of the play, the actors who were portraying the farmers, they reclaimed their land from the illegal owners, and there was a revolution, and they said, and we all must go out and fight, right? And so that was the end of the play. And so when they finished, the real workers, the real farm workers who were watching in the field, they were with it. They leapt to their feet and they were like, bravo, let's go do it right now. And so Boal and his troupe of actors were like, well, those guns you saw in our play, they're not real guns, they're wooden guns. So we can't really go out with y'all like that. And they were like, well, that's okay. Like, we've got real guns. Let's do this right now. And so Boal and his actors were actually forced to admit that they really didn't have any intention of taking part in a real revolution. And so the real farm workers said, then you're kind of full of it and we're going to need y'all to leave. And so that embarrassed Boal. He had to take a moment and think, well, what am I doing here? What are my actors doing here if we've had no experience of farming stolen land and we're encouraging them to put their lives at risk, but we're not willing to do the same? And so he thought about that and came up with a different way of practicing art that was really about centering the narrative of the people telling the story. Their stories would be on stage. They would be the ones telling it themselves. And so that's our mission at TONYC, to kind of carry on that same vision and we partner with community members at local organizations. We form theater troupes, and those troupes devise and perform plays based on their challenges, confronting economic inequality, racism, other social health and human rights injustices. And after each performance, actors and audiences get a chance to engage in theatrical brainstorming. And what we tend to focus on at TONYC is something called forum theater, which is really about interpersonal oppression, coming up against another person who says, like, nah, you don't get what you need because of who I perceive you to be. When I got this opportunity to talk to Leslie about this particular project that I got a chance to virtually do with Charlottesville, I started to think about some of the other techniques that Boal had outside of forum theater. So sometimes theater of the oppressed is described like a tree with many branches. And so towards the top in orange, you'll see forum theater. Like I said, that's our kind of bread and butter in NYC, but there are a few other things. And so what we use to collage our stories together, and I do say ours because I feel like we all found solidarity as we began to talk about what has happened in Charlottesville and the legacy that's very unique to that place. But the two other techniques are newspaper theater and Rainbow of Desire. And there's sort of like a mini twig under Rainbow of Desire called Cops in the Head, which I'm about to talk about because we spent a lot of time there. So in the Cops in the Head framework, I invite artists to tell a story about a situation when they didn't do what they wanted to do because of the voices in their head. And I'll mention part of why we call it Cops in the Head is because those voices police our behavior. They tell us where to go, what we can and cannot do. So they become cops in the head, and some of those cops have precincts. But yeah, so one of the stories that we got a chance to talk about was maybe wanting to stay away from a place that has brought you a lot of trauma that would be triggering to you. But maybe you feel like you have to go there. You feel like you have to engage with places and people that have already harmed you because of those voices in your head. And so then the next kind of part of this framework, and there are all these silly little voices and these gifts that I put in here. These voices start telling us, like, no, like you have to take your friend to the mall. Don't be weird, right? Or you hear somebody in your head saying, well, why are you asking so many questions, right? And so all of these voices kind of conspire to make you start to do things you don't want to do. So those are the kind of stories we use in a Cops in the Head framework. And what becomes exciting about the process is, so maybe the person telling the story will start identifying what voices were in his or her head that kept him from taking action. But then the rest of us start to recognize that, oh, we also have those same cops in the head. And so we help that person telling their story by embodying those voices with images and sounds. And we also start to talk about, where did those voices come from? We have a little bit of a script where we say, hey, blank, remember when you blank? That's why I blank. Maybe it's hey, mom, remember when you told me to close my legs at church? That's why I'm afraid to take up space now. And so we start to figure out where all of these voices come from, and that a lot of us have similar voices, or we recognize those voices because we've seen that image and that sound someplace else. And then a last part of the process that we didn't quite get to because we only had about 2 hours together, we start to battle against those voices. We start to think about what kind of antidote or antibodies might fight against a voice that maybe isn't telling you the right thing. Do you need to be more gentle with that voice? Do you need to be rough with that voice? Do you need to bring that voice hope? And so we would, if we had a couple more hours together, we might have gotten a chance to do that. And so what that's looked like at TONYC, we had a play called The Nature of the Crime, which was about the experience of our actors that had previously been incarcerated, and how hard it can be to kind of get back on your feet, get your footing in New York because of the nature of your crime. And so this play featured a husband who had gotten a call on his way home that he was being fired due to his criminal background. And on the way home, the cop in his head of his uncle that would have shamed him for not being a real man, for not being able to provide, started to show up. And then the cop in his head of his cousin, who was like, just smoke it off. Like, you don't even have to deal with this. You don't have to tell your wife, also started to show up. And so he gets home, and eventually he tells his wife, and the cops in her head also start to show up. Her mother starts to show up in her head that would have told her to just be a good woman and not ask any questions. The voice of her sister showed up that said maybe she was just married to a lazy, trifling Negro. And so all of those voices kind of swirl around in their head, and you can see that it's impacting their ability to communicate effectively. And so this particular play, ended with a storming out. This husband can't really talk to his wife. It's almost violent how difficult it is for him to discuss things with her. And so then our job at Theater of the Oppressed, the facilitators, would start to talk to the audience about, well, what problems are we noticing here? And what could we do? What might the antidote to these kind of voices be? And as opposed to focusing on the interpersonal oppression, we actually start to think about internalized stuff and how we can take action the next time those voices show up in our head. And so then the other technique that I mentioned, it's called newspaper theater. Boal had 12 techniques that were created to help actors make theatrical scenes from things like newspaper or other written material that wasn't necessarily meant to be theater. But the goal is to transform non-dramatic text, it could even be the Constitution, into a performance that could critique our social reality. And so one of those techniques is called complementary reading, where you would add information that might be omitted from the text to give it a more complete version. And that information might come from news or research, the knowledge that we possess. I also like to think about ancestral knowledge. Not everything we know is because we read it someplace. Some things we know because it lives in our gut. It's guttural, it's spiritual. So not everything that's added to a complementary reading has to be factual in that way. It can just be true in a different way. But the leading question is, what do we know that's not there? What is missing? And so in a little bit, we're going to share a video of what we did in the room with the Jefferson School. And so what that looked like for us at TONYC, we did a piece called The Trial, that was co-created by Omari and myself. As many of you might know, in 2019, Officer Pantaleo was fired from the NYPD for the killing of Eric Garner in July 2014. The killing was captured on video. Many people saw it. And a number of the other officers were shown using force for that illegal arrest. And many of the other officers were shown failing to intervene or provide aid. And so what we created was a theatrical court scene We took their real testimonies and put them in our own theatrical court where we could really interrogate what they had said and provide information that was missing from what they said. So that's a bit about what we've been up to. I'm going to stop sharing screen. I'm back. Hey. So I would love to share with you all a little clip from our rehearsal. It's been edited a little bit by Omari. But yeah, this is really just a draft of our process. We didn't go back and re-rehearse it, but this was the raw material that the actors from the Jefferson School came up with, like, out the gate. I was very moved and impressed by it, and I hope you will be too. So yeah, Leslie, take it away and share the video before we come back together. 3, 2, 1, action.
Images of neo-Nazis marching in the streets and violent clashes between alt-right protesters and counter-protesters in Charlottesville last year are still fresh in many residents' minds.
Pause. It was nowhere near as neat as that. The images look crafted. It wasn't crafted. There was no way in. There was no way out. We told the police, we told the mayor, we told the governor that they better prepare for this, and they did not. They did not believe us. And then they want to say, this is not who we are. This is exactly who we are, who we've always been, who we will always be. So no, do not craft this sentence. It wasn't that neat.
On August 12, 2017, a Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville turned deadly when a 20-year-old Ohio man allegedly accelerated his car into a crowd of counterprotesters, killing 32-year-old Heather Hyatt.
Pause. It was clear what he did was intentional, and she was not the only person who was hurt. She was the only person who was murdered, but she was not the only person there who was hurt, and not even just physically, but mentally by that moment and those days.
And also pause, it turned deadly on August 11th, 2017, when an alt-right member took a tiki torch to a Charlottesville member, cracked him across his head, busted his carotid artery, and he lost 10% of his brain power. So he could have lost his life had not medical people acted quickly. Other people were being assaulted and maimed and harmed and beaten with the intention of violence and or death. So it turned deadly days before.
Pause. I was in the church across the street from where the Tiki Torch rally happened. And we were locked in the church, and there were students outside the church banging on the doors, asking to come in because their lives were in danger.
Pause. So was I.
Now, some of the same right-wing groups involved in those events in Charlottesville are planning another protest to coincide with the anniversary this weekend. Virginia Governor Ralph Northam.
They've been protesting and they've been planning protests all this year. There was a KKK rally in May of 2017, that year before. They also planned a rally in January of that year before. We had three white supremacist rallies before the Unite the Right rally in 2017 in Charlottesville because they got a park permit. That's how easy it is to have a white supremacist rally in Virginia. So, hey, look, you can do it whenever, wherever you want. And they're still doing it till this day. And there's going to be another rally on March 4th. Continue.
Pause. And that's why January 6, 2021 happened. Because once again, nobody listened to the chatter that the FBI and everybody else was telling that was happening. They've been planning these rallies. They want a race war, and they just about got it. What the heck do we have to say? What do we have to do to make people recognize that domestic terrorism is as old as these United States of America?
Charlottesville, best known for being home to the State University created by Thomas Jefferson, may seem like an unusual choice for a heated battle involving neo-Nazis, but there was a reason that Unite the Right organizers chose the town for their rally.
Pause.
Pause. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go first.
Oh, uh, about the Thomas Jefferson thing. Thomas Jefferson was literally a pedophile and a slave owner. Why are we surprised that this is where we're going to have a rally? This is the heart of racism. We got Monticello up the street. My school is named Monticello. Why are you surprised?
Further, I remember being a little girl when we encountered the one drop rule that happened, that was originated in Virginia. And I said to my little girl self, that doesn't make good sense. There's always going to be me. But if there's a one drop rule, if only one drop of black blood makes you no longer white, looks like to me white folks just define themselves out of existence.
Pause. The University of Virginia has a history of being a finishing school for rich sons of slave owners until 1961, where they allowed their first African-American law student to enroll in the university. And then not until 1970 were even women allowed to enter the school. And only then did they start to eventually become known for being prestigious. But that is a recent part of its history. It has over a century of history of just being discriminatory towards Black people and women.
Pause. On the grounds of UVA, professors kept slaves. Jefferson's design of UVA became the basis of our prison complex.
Pause. As an undergraduate student at the University of Virginia, one of the first women and one of the first Black women, when I walked into the classroom, the professor said to the entire classroom, "You need not think that you can get an A in this class. The best that you will do is a B and a minus after that."
I'm going to stop there. We could keep going with this article. This piece is fire, but let's take a deep breath in, deep breath out.
Yeah, that's a lot. It's a lot. So I want to kind of, first of all, I want to connect this workshop and what was talked about and what came out of it to the grander piece this week of Liberation and Freedom Days. This week is to celebrate the day that Charlottesville was liberated by the Union Army, right? It's the day that the Union Army marched in and said, "Here you go." 53% of the population at that point was Black. And that is the moment that most of them found out that they were no longer enslaved. Last night, we had our keynote address by Dr. Christy Coleman, where she talked about the repositioning of narratives surrounding history. She talked about the downfall of only using one perspective, right? Only using the written record, only using a verbal record, only using newspapers and the like, right? Because the actual story is a combination of all of those things. And instead of thinking of it as a line or even a circle, that we need to think of it as a sphere. So to me, that is what this work, the work that you guys did in this workshop, does. It creates the sphere of understanding around certain things. So let me ask our participants. G. Allen, Reverend Brenda, what was, I mean, both of you are theater artists, experienced actors. What was this experience like for you?
I think it was really informative to just see how it really impacted us as individuals, as part of this community that's connected to the oppression that is not spoken about in Charlottesville. I think that when you think about Charlottesville and you think about the University of Virginia specifically, that is almost considered a little blue dot, a haven amidst a lot of just backwards thinking maybe in Western Virginia. And that was just an experience where you see all that rhetoric or all what's on the surface may not be as true as you had thought. And what we were saying is like, these are the viewpoints of citizens or the Black alumni of the university that that felt like this, but never felt either comfortable or felt heard with those types of opinions about those types of perspectives related to not just our experience in Charlottesville, but the history of Charlottesville in itself.
I'm a native Charlottesvillian, and I was surprised at how immediately cathartic the exercise was. One would think that it would take a long time to get to the level of excavation that we got to, but it was almost immediate. And I'm going, whoa, this is amazing. It's life-giving. It hurts on some level, but it doesn't produce death. It produces life.
Yeah. I think that's, and I know that because this workshop and this kind of theatrical process was new to you guys, that it was a little jarring, right? Because you hear theater workshop and you think, oh, we're gonna play games and it's gonna be fun, and this was real work, right? And I know a few of you had some really powerful reactions to it, and one, I'm thankful that you invested yourself in it to the point where you were able to have that reaction. Like, thank you for doing that. And two, Charlottesville Players Guild is in the process of creating an educational arm to what we do, and really thinking about bringing this work to Charlottesville for a longer period of time to create a devised piece. So one, I want to know if y'all would be down for that. And two, I want to know, do you see that? Do you see the good in that?
Oh, there's right. Efficacy. I want to say right now, in case I forget later, thank you, Liz and Omari. You all were masterful at what you were doing. We felt, I think I did, and you can speak for yourself, J. Allen, but I felt held and guided. We were out there, but I didn't feel that I was out of reach or out of touch from help, because this was a deep dive, and that can be scary and painful, but I felt guided, I felt held, so that it was safe. And I think that's what you want to happen. This work has great efficacy. This society does not like to talk about painful things, and yet this is one of the most painful places in the country. And painful things are what we must now talk about, or there'll be no need to talk. There'll be no place to talk in or at.
I would definitely agree with what Ms. Brenda said. I think one thing is that we noticed, like, our cast of participants had people from different generations, and you can see how the levels of oppressions or the type of oppressions we went through, it was different. They were unique in a way, but they're all stemming back to that lack of communication or a lack of respect of our perspective or our experiences. And once again, Liz and Omari really did provide an environment that allowed us to have these deep conversations, to consider these really hard to speak to about examples that, from people outside of our perspectives, that's just an everyday thing. And it might be an everyday thing for us as individuals, but it still lingers and it still hurts and it's hard to talk about. And I feel like I think it's just a testament to how well they crafted this environment for us that we were able to. You said it was a workshop. I thought it was a rehearsal, and then it's like, oh, we're running with this. I was like, oh, okay, and that was just really how good it was.
This is it. Yeah, this is it. I mean, there were tears, y'all. This was the real.
Well, what's so powerful about y'all saying that is Boal would call Theater of the Oppressed rehearsal for real life. You're supposed to be preparing to take action in real life. So the fact that y'all came to that without me even giving that in the presentation means the world. So thank you both.
Yeah. So, Liz, I want to ask, so one, how long have you been doing these workshops with Theater of the Oppressed?
So yeah, in around 2015, I was working for another organization. They had hired me to kind of teach devised theater, which I have general experience with, but I didn't know anything about Theater of the Oppressed. And so part of their professional development, they said, go train with TONYC, whatever they have, just take it. And it actually happened to be Cops in the Head, this technique that I just used with you all. But because their bread and butter is forum theater, I would say my Cops in the Head, even though that's like how I entered TO, I feel like it's a skill that I lose. It's tools that I lose, and then I come back to it. Yeah, so I've been doing this work since 2015, all over New York, and really all over the nation. I even got a chance to go to Jana Sanskriti, which is in Kolkata, India, where they have a Theater of the Oppressed, a Center for Theater of the Oppressed there, and really figure out, I mean, the ways that people practice this work, it's got to be different.
Right. Right, because it's based in whatever is going on with the people in the location.
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, my European colleagues, they do all sorts of exercises where people are touching each other and doing all of this. And I was like, in New York, we like our boundaries. I don't do that exercise with my people. And so there's really, you got to develop a certain level of like cultural competency and figuring stuff out. And it's scary to do that on Zoom where we were rehearsing. I was like, I don't really know y'all like that, and so I'm hoping.
Right.
With me, but they did, and yeah, it was. I know. I felt like it was a gift to be in the room with y'all. Oh, what's up, David?
Hey, David. Our hardworking brother just got off work, decided to join us. Thank you.
Always, no problem.
So yeah, David, you like came in at the perfect moment. So I had asked everyone before what their thoughts, their feelings, their takeaways from the workshop were.
Yeah. I mean, I will basically reiterate the same thing that I told you, Leslie. It was hard. And the exact phrase was, I felt like I was turned emotionally inside out at the end of it. Like I said, I felt like I knew what I was coming into. And I just didn't think it would be so in depth. And so, I guess for lack of better words, traumatic. And one thing that I will express that I thought about, Leslie, that I didn't give the note to you, and please don't take offense to this, but I do feel that a certain set of trauma that I personally emotionally experienced was talking to non-Seville residents about Seville trauma.
Yeah.
And not having a person to mediate that conversation, not having a point person that knows the two parties, because I felt like that's a lot of what post 8/12 stuff was. A lot of media representation, a lot of people parachuting in down. Do you need mediation between your coalition and your groups? Do you need Do you need group therapy sessions? Can we help out? All of this in good faith, however, you don't know. And you just got here and you've been here for a week, and then you're going to leave next week. And nothing is going to come from this, from you. And the faith that I had in the people that, you know, I confided in and I put my trust in, none of those people are nowhere to be found to this day. Not a checkup, not nothing. So it just goes to show how fleeting these experience are for everybody, how it sticks with people for lifetimes, and how it barely touches folks. And I came out with a little bit of resentment, even in my understanding. And one thing I did express to Leslie, and Liz, I'll express this to you, I didn't want this to be a piece of performative pain for a majority of white residents of Charlottesville who did not experience this pain, who locked their doors, who locked their stores and protected their property because they knew there were skinheads and rednecks coming down to fuck shit up, specifically Black people. So they locked up the property and they protected their shit, but they didn't protect Black people. And now everybody wants a piece about A12, and especially live arts, and especially all these drama heads in Charlottesville. They want to watch it. They want to feel something. They want to analyze it. They want to say, oh my gosh, you were right. Oh my gosh, there was so much I could do. White guilt, white guilt, white guilt. And then it's Monday again. And then let's see what's on Netflix.
Right. So, and I think that this, the process that we're trying to start here, of bringing Theater of the Oppressed here for a longer residency, and helping the because I mean, a lot of the people that were on those streets, not just that weekend, but even before then and even after then, they're artists. They are the artists that live and work here
since Occupy Charlottesville,
and they they've been working that beat. Right, and they don't have a space that they can unpack all of those things with people who have a similar experience, right?
And who they feel safe with.
We know that artists, you know, we enter things a little differently, right? We're just a little left of center, and we're supposed to be. And so having these tools, so that we can have a way in to not only unpack this kind of stuff for ourselves, but create something out of it, right? And give it a different spin, because all of us have kind of been holding all of this, right? And I'm likening it to those people in 1865 who were enslaved at the university, and all of a sudden they have this white person walk up to them and say, oh, no, you're free now. You know, then you've got all this stuff. It's like, wait a minute, what do you mean I'm free? What does that mean? How do I process that? Where am I going to live? What do I do? You know, so there's, for those of us who have, you know, lived here for all our lives, or predominant part of our lives, we have that ancestral trauma on top of everything, you know, that we need a safe place as artists to unpack it and deal with it and give it a positive outcome for ourselves.
That
right?
word works for me well. Unpack. That's such an apt term. It needs to be unpacked. Yeah, we need to unpack. We need to let people know that there is a place where the unpacking can be done, and we can help you start the process.
Right. Absolutely. So I loved the pause the news, and the thing I loved about it is that I think that's something that we just inherently do in our living rooms as we're watching something. We're like, you know, we hear a headline and we're like, come on, no, that
Especially
ain't
Black
it.
folks.
Right?
It's like, that's bullshit.
Right.
That motherfucker's there for the job.
Right. That feels so close to us, right? That's, you know, that we always have that call and response going on with a newscast. So Liz, my question to you is, what is it only done with news, or have you experimented with doing it with not just historical documents, but even like semi-historical texts about a place?
Yeah, I mean, I bring in newspaper theater sparingly, and my default is to go to actual news. But something I've had fun with is also what I would call like comment section theater, because I think people have a lot of interesting stuff to say on online forums, on Facebook, and just taking a little snippet of that and turning that into theater. We have so many things that people think they know a thing about what happened, right? They think they know what happened at Seville. They think they know what happened to Eric Garner. And to be able to put what we know to be true right up against what people are saying online with no real accountability to what they've given voice to, I think can also be very powerful. And again, hopefully, like all of this theater of the oppressed work is towards us taking action in real life. Like hopefully that empowers us to intervene. I'm thinking about how long it took all of these social media groups to basically, tell 45, you can't say that.
Right.
It took them up until the 11th hour to actually say, like, what you're saying is impacting real people.
Than 3/4 hour.
Yeah. Right.
It only took 3 white people to get shot.
Right. Right. And we need to, and I know, like I think we all in this room know that while this is not actually our work to do, right? It's not our work. We also know that it's going to fall on us 99.999% of the time. And that is a brave choice, right? And that's a hard choice to make. But I also think that it is the inherent choice of the artist, right? That's what artists do. That's what we're supposed to do. We are supposed to tell the truth, right? So what do you guys think? What was the most transformative moment for you guys, for each of you during this workshop?
It's what I love about church. All these people in different bodies and the Holy Spirit, we call it the Holy Spirit. We come together as one. And the same thing started happening in this workshop for me. We were each telling our stories, but they started to sync up. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, it's like, it's not 1, 5 or 6 or 7 streams. It's all roads lead to this one place. Mm-hmm. And your trauma might have been different from mine, but it's still trauma. And we're talking about it. And perhaps it's the act of talking about it and reliving it and hearing others talk about how they negotiated their trauma, or how they're in the process of trying to negotiate the trauma. It puts us on the same wavelength, and it happens, and you go, oh my gosh. It's so much bigger. It becomes this organic healing thing. Right. That's major for me.
I second that. And that's funny because it leads me into my most transformative experience was the conversation with my father. And I actually think about that to this day. My father's the reason I went out there in A12. My father had to play underneath that statue. And hear his concerns diminished and downplayed. It's just a statue. What are you worried about? You know, it was a good, you know, he was a general, he was a Virginia. He was gaslighted, man. He was whitewashed. And today, I live with my father. Today he said, have a nice day. Don't cause any trouble. Now, what does the mindset of a person who says that represents? It means all of his life, he kept his head down to not cause trouble, because if he did, they could take away his job, his family, his career, his character,
his life.
And if he got just a little bit angry, if he came out just a little bit out of pocket, what could happen?
And he's telling you, I want you to come home alive.
Yeah.
Brenda knows it. She's been living here this whole time. My father has been brainwashed by white supremacy. To the point when I ask him about it, he freezes like a deer in headlights and he can't talk about his childhood. He won't tell me about the pain that he suffered because he can't, not because he doesn't want to. He can't. And I know he can't. And that's why he tells me not to ask any questions, because he don't want to hear the answers.
Yeah.
And I want to hear the answers because that makes me know so much more about him. And I can't know about him because of the trauma that this fucking city has put on his body. And it's all of us. And I thank you for bringing that inside of me. And I'm mad at you for bringing that inside of me.
Yeah.
But I definitely want to make this into something. And maybe not with all of the, gesticulations and stuff in the back, but I'm going to make this into something.
Yeah.
So that was an important part for me. And I think what people don't recognize about A12 is it's not just one day, and it's not just one generation of kids, and it's not just a group of people. This is so much deeper.
Yeah.
This is generations and generations and generations of Virginia fucking over Black people and letting white people come in there and beat the shit out of them. Literally, figuratively, emotionally, mentally.
Yeah, this is actually, this is generational, and I'm glad that the workshop was able to get you to that place. Like this is our relationship. I push you, and then you hate me, and then you love me after.
This is true. This is true for y'all that don't know.
It's okay. But yeah, I mean, and your point about everyone wanting some sort of theatrical piece or something about Charlottesville, there are certain people that should be writing that, and there are certain people that shouldn't.
Does it cost?
Right.
It's not free, it costs.
Right, because the cost that was paid on that day was not only that ticket had been ringing up long before August 12, 2017. And if that's the only time you noticed the total at the bottom, you don't need to be writing none. You don't need to be writing none.
Mm.
You know, this
Well,
started hundreds of years ago, sweetheart. This tally could measure the entire length of the city 3 or 4 times.
you're way late, way late.
Way late, you know? And that's what I am hoping that the continuation of this will bring about, right? It will give all of the Black artists in this city the tools that they need in order to get to those places so that they can tell that story, right? It was Maya Angelou that said, the story is in there. It has to come out. It has to come out. And that's what I'm hoping that this process and these tools will bring to us.
Theater of the Oppressed is a marvelous excavating tool.
Yes. Yes. So G. Allen, what was your transformative moment?
So I would say it's probably a combination of perceiving everyone that was participating. I'm probably one of the few. I think I'm the one participant that's not a native of Charlottesville, but I've lived my adult life here. Most of my adult life in Charlottesville. So I think that seeing these perspectives and comparing it to my perspective, because like I know about the history of Charlottesville based off of what I learned, but not based off of the experiences of my family or my ancestors. I don't have that direct connection to the community like David and Miss Brenda. So hearing these stories and how it affects them personally in a different type of personal way that it affects me. Because like I can ask my family how these oppressions impacted them when they were living in parts of Georgia that I've never lived in before. And I can learn from them and I can understand it and I can empathize and I can feel that rage. But then I have my own experience that makes me infuriated. And then I'm looking at these individuals sharing a totally different level than something I perceived. And it just really just resonates, like just how much, even from someone that I would think I was paying attention and I'm knowledgeable and I see it and I recognize how the community has been impacted and how the oppressors continue to, like, you know, give us surface level information, not really telling us the truth, but I'm aware of that. But then you speak to the people that are here and they see it and they've lived it, and it's even more than what I already knew. And I just really just gain a better perspective of this environment that I've learned to know so well,
Right.
but at the same time, I don't know it as well as I could. And so I really thank everyone apart that participated for sharing those experiences that I don't have, that those connections to the city that I don't have, so that I can better understand not just what I already knew below the surface level, but also how it directly impacted those the citizens and the natives and the people that have been here generationally, and just how it just has always impacted them more than me, someone that's just been here since he was 18, can understand, versus the ones that went to Monticello and Albemarle High School, the ones that have been surrounded by the monuments to the slave masters, that, like, there's a monument to the enslaved persons that built the university. It's a brand new thing on grounds, and that's new. But that's something that's like a part of, like, my envisionment. Like, this is Charlottesville because this is part that I know. But like for people that have been living here for years and decades, and that they've had no recognition of that before, that's completely different. It's that perspective of those things are different. So it gave me a new perspective, and I really appreciate that.
Oh, this is wonderful. I wish it didn't have to come to an end, but we only have an hour. But I just want to thank each and every one of you, because I know that this was hard work. I know it brought up stuff for each and every one of you in different ways. And I need to say, if I haven't said it before, I need to say that I am so grateful to know all of you. I am so grateful to be able to work with all of you and create with all of you. It is literally the blessing of my life. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And we're gonna do more of it. We're gonna do a lot more of it. I need to thank Liz and Omari for
Thank you.
doing this
Thank
work
you
with
for your
us.
time and your effort and your energy and your knowledge.
Amazing.
Yeah, thank Omari times 10. For me, he was
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah,
Day.
and
And we will definitely make plans once we can gather together in person. We are making plans for the two of you to come here and fulfill this in a larger way for us, because I think it was transformative for everyone. It was needed for everyone, and I think it's something that we should be using going forward to help us to really amplify our own voices. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Leslie.
I love each and every one of you.
thank you.
Love the Queen Bee.
Until next.
And I will see y'all next time.
All right.
Bye.
See you tomorrow. Or today.